My entire life has been driven by my love for fish. My appreciation for these animals has led me to care deeply about them. Being able to explore places with intact ecosystems and healthy fish populations keeps me whole. It allows me to tune in to the natural environments and observe the world outside of myself. And what I've seen is a world full of wonder. I'm Captain Quinn. For the last 7 years, I've been raising my family on the Skeena River in northwestern British Columbia, dedicating my time to documenting my fishing adventures in an attempt to show the world how much better life is with healthy populations of wild salmon and steelhead.
When snakes comes along, I do it in, then reel it in.
Do you like fishing? Tell me how much you like fishing. During my time in northern BC, I've met many different, incredible groups of people up and down the Skeena River, who have all forged unique relationships with salmon and steelhead. When fish populations were healthy, everyone was happy. But now, the fish populations are in trouble. Everyone seems to be fighting.
20 miles of frickin' river, and you catch my bobber.
You gotta cast up higher, man.
You're fishing right in my hole right now.
This is the best hole on the river.
This is my hole.
This is a classic interaction that often takes place at overcrowded fishing spots. These two goons are getting into it over who has the right to fish this run.
When it rains, it pours. Water's up to my chin. Won't stop fighting.
And here comes me, trying to keep the peace.
Many men try to reach it. Many men have failed. Well, if you wanna get to heaven, you gotta raise a little hell. And I've been running from the law.
I suppose nice guys do finish last, but don't worry about me. It's mainly just rocks between those two ears anyways. To me, salmon and steelhead are magnificent creatures, capable of uniting us all. But as their already low populations decline even further, tensions between user groups continue to rise, when we should be working together to save the fish. People are divided, and that's the problem. So I decided that I was going to do something about it. I decided I was going to start a campaign to bring people together for the fish. I was going to run the entire length of the Skeena River in a foam fish diaper.
Hope they won't shoot me down
After 5 long, grueling kilometers, I got tired, cold, and a bit hungry. Nobody showed up. I had no friends. It was the loneliest movement on the planet. So I gave up and decided to come at it from a different angle. If the people weren't going to come to me, then I was going to go to the people. I set out to meet and interview the people of the Skeena River whose lives have been touched by salmon and steelhead. My goal was to start a conversation by giving people who cherish these fish a chance to share their insights, perspectives, and opinions. I think that it's through our stories that we will recognize we are all actually more similar than we are different. And it is here that we will find the perfect starting place for a better future. A future that must have fish. Before we get started, let's rewind about 20,000 years. This was the maximum cover from the last ice age. Then about 14,500 years ago, the planet entered a phase of warming. Glaciers gorged out mountain ranges and river valleys. Rivers and streams were born. The Skeena River was born. Eventually, salmon, bears, mountain goats, and countless other animals habituated these new landscapes and waterways. Not far behind them were humans. The First Nations peoples of the Skeena River hold a sacred, long-standing relationship with these animals, this landscape, and natural world. Since time immemorial, they nurtured this relationship, which deeply inspired their culture and way of life. To kick off my journey, I made my way upriver to get a better sense of the cultural value these fish hold for the many First Nations peoples living along the Skeena River.
You can't replace it as a food source within our family. It's something that we've had since I can remember, with having the fish to eat all the time, whether that be fresh fish, smoked fish, jarred fish. This year was the first year that I didn't get smoked fish or jarred fish. I had 3 fresh fish put in my freezer this year, and that's not enough to feed me and my family. You can't replace that protein to the First Nations communities. I think if you put a trend line on the Sockeye escapements, the line will be going down.
Gotcha.
And probably true for all species. First Nations with the priority right under the Constitution of Canada have the first right for the fish, to ensure that our food fish needs are met. Not being able to get that right, fill that right, is a hard pill to swallow for First Nations. Especially when you have other user groups fishing. It doesn't matter what species they're fishing for, they're still out there fishing.
It's like a slap in the face.
It is a slap in the face. Where traditional management was, you took what you needed and it was controlled by the syndicate of these fisheries, at fish fences, etc. Now where we look into the future is, what do we see that has happened since contact? The fisheries has changed to an aggregate abundance-based management, which has led to the long-term decline in the diversity of populations throughout the Skeena.
Between the 17 and 1800s, another group of people showed up to settle on what is now known as British Columbia's west coast, the European settlers. They soon too discovered the value of Pacific salmon. and in the late 1800s, the first salmon cannery on the Skeena was born, marking the beginning of an economic boom for the area, centered around the commercial salmon fishery. Following the flow of the river, I made my way downstream to learn more about the history of salmon canneries in the Skeena.
These places just exploded, in the spring, the first month or two before June, so April, May, getting ready for the canning season, and then in June it just exploded with all the workers coming in, and you can just imagine the whole mouth of the Skeena just lined with boats out there, all these rowboats and sailboats, and guys just bobbing around and competing for the fish, and getting in arguments and that about the prime spots and jockeying for position and that. So yeah, really a lively place in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So the first cannery on the Skeena was the Inverness Cannery in 1877, and the last operating cannery was the Cassiar Cannery, which was also the longest running one, and that ran from 1903 to 1983. And at this point, we have no other canneries on the north coast. All the fish that are taken during our commercial fisheries are all transported to southern BC now or offshore for processing. The peak years, I would say, were the early 1900s, where I think by 1902 we had 14 operating canneries just in the mouth of the Skeena alone. And from there, I would say by the late 20s, there was a slow decline in the number of canneries. Fish populations declining. Just like any resource industry, you see the boom and bust. You could see that the canneries were out there initially 7 days a week catching salmon. There was really no awareness of conservation for these fish, and it wasn't until probably 20 or 30 years into the canneries that they decided to give the fish a break and actually stop fishing on Sundays. So that also gave the fishermen and the cannery workers a break, so they gave them a full day to repair their nets, come in, get a good shower and meals and that. But 6 days a week was definitely a lot of pressure on those fish.
That whole industry, like it obviously was thriving in the area. Do you think they kind of did they catch too much fish and dig their own grave, and then, or why did all the canneries start closing down?
Yeah, I think you can see the writing on the wall. Like most resource industries, you deplete the stock, you deplete the resource, and you get this slow decline. And yeah, I don't think it's any different than any other resource, mineral resource. Like you said, the fish are a resource or a commodity, and out there 7 days a week with that many boats, the numbers just started going down and down and down. And it's not just our canneries on the mouth of the Skeena. I mean, we all know that our salmon go through the United States, through the Panhandle there, and the number of canneries up there were just as prominent. And I'm sure they were intercepting a lot of the Skeena salmon as well, and there was all kinds of canneries. And there's still remnants of lots of those too, up in Alaska and the Panhandle. So, they didn't just have the Skeena salmon or canneries to contend with, they had all the American ones to the north of us to contend with, and all, the same kind of idea up there. And I think back then, people thought the salmon, there was an endless supply. I honestly think they probably thought you could catch these fish, as many as you could possibly, and you could never deplete them. And I think that we realize now that that's not the case, that even with the technology we had back then, you could still deplete the stocks. And people, like you said, they're just looking out for their family. They want to feed their family, and then they put the blame on other people, which is still happening today. We blame everyone and anyone for it's never ourselves or our group. It's always the other group that's responsible for the demise of the salmon and steelhead on the Skeena River. So, ultimately, I think everyone's probably at blame to some extent, but yeah, and it's just, this isn't just unique to the Skeena region. This is, around the world. This is something that happens, our East Coast cod stocks, have gone through that. And, I think maybe because the Skeena region is one of the last areas, in this, this part of the world that still has relatively strong stocks that, hopefully everyone can get behind this, and we can really get our salmon to thrive again.
For over 100 years, commercial fishermen trolled their lures and set their nets around the Skeena River, providing fish for the canneries to be shipped to market. During this time, a rich and exciting lifestyle was experienced, and while fish populations were abundant, the commercial fishery thrived. But now that fish populations are in trouble, so is the fishery and seafaring lifestyle. I made my way to the mouth of the Skeena River, where it meets the Pacific Ocean, to learn more about the commercial salmon fishery, where it has been, and where it is at today.
The salmon run is short, lasting from the middle of May until the middle of August, and every means is taken to catch as many fish as possible.
Purse seine fishing. The lookout spots the salmon, and the small boat moves away, carrying the purse seine behind it. Floats at the top and lead weights at the bottom form a wall of netting suspended in the water. The crew of the big boat throw leaded lines and drive plungers into the water to keep the salmon headed toward the net. Then the small boat circles back with the far end of the net in tow, thus enclosing the fish on all sides. And now, lines that are threaded through rings in the bottom of the net are drawn in, closing up the bottom as strings close a lady's purse. Of the three major commercial fishing methods, trolling is the only one that makes no use of nets, depending instead on hooks and line. The hooks are baited for chinook or coho, the most likely of the 5 salmon species to strike a lure. Herring strips are frequently used for bait, but every troll fisherman has his own theory of what the salmon like. Plugs of every description appear each year, and often theories are discarded in mid-season as the fishermen try one lure and then another. A silver flasher is a frequent competitor for attention. Whatever the bait, an outrigger takes the line and the slow trolling begins. It ends with the strike, and the line is drawn in by hand. A single fish instead of a net full, but well worth the troller's time when it goes to market. As the trollers trail their lures, other net fishermen exploit the salmon's return to the freshwater streams of their birth. Gill nets, set to drift with existing currents, intercept the fish as they head upstream. Their wide mesh permits the smaller ones to pass through, but ensnares the gills of the larger fish, trapping them as the nets are drawn in.
I can't describe how exciting it is to see a fish or 100 fish or 170,000 pounds of fish. It's thrilling.
There was a ton of fish. I remember having like great seasons up here. Like, I don't know, we'd fish 5 days a week. We were tired from fishing and caught lots.
Lately it appears there's been many bad years in a row, and it's really affecting who is and or if anybody wants to get into the fishery. The confidence levels, I would suggest, are low, which led me to start to think about getting out.
I think this year was one of the worst I've ever heard. It was probably, overall for salmon, it was probably the worst.
It's sadness. You're out there and you're wondering why there's no fish. Even the whales seem depressed. You're around and they're around working their tack. They're trying to catch some fish too. It's wild out there. You can sense the mood of all nature at times. And sometimes it's absolutely depressing.
It's the seals, it's the sea lions, it's the global warming, it's the sports fishermen, it's the upriver First Nations, it's the commercial guys.
The commercial sport fishermen have been railing against the commercial fishery, which in turn makes the commercial fishery want to rail against the commercial sport fishery.
Commercial fishermen fish a quota. Let's say it was 500 springs this year. Let's just say it was 500 springs.
One boat, yeah.
But charter fishermen, this year definitely was 2 fish per day per guest. But do you think they stopped?
Do they not have to?
No. You can continue fishing and potentially killing fish for fun. The statistic is, 10% mortality rate on catch and release. That is 10% too much for me. If I catch 10 fish and 1 dies for fun, I can't handle that. That's like littering to me. It's just disgusting. I've been ripping on charter guys, but I know a lot of very conscientious charter guys, and honestly, to me, they're the villain, but I know some very smart, nice ones, so it's hard to hate anybody. Mm-hmm. I just hope that everybody's following the rules, and at the very least, following the rules. But the rules are and you need to be more conscientious than the rules. You know, the rules are not enough. We've had rules forever, and here we are. People that aren't catching fish affect fish. Don't be fooled. You don't have to put a hook in the water to impact fish. That's something to think about. You drive a car, anything that affects that environment, you need to be conscientious of what you're doing, and yeah, take a hit, big deal. Ride a bike, don't catch fish, don't litter. Whatever it is that you do that could affect fish, you should maybe come up with an alternative, figure it out, and yeah, give it up. Because if you want to catch fish, you can't just complain them back into existence. It's just not going to happen.
These fish serve to enrich cultures and economies. They provide healthy food for many, but their value does not stop there. For some, trying to catch a fish only to release it again provides such a soul-enriching experience that they are willing to travel from all over the world just to throw feathers into the water for a chance encounter with one of these beautiful creatures. I made my way to where the river meanders, forming buckets, tailouts, and opportunity for those seeking the catch and release experience.
Catch and release is something that I believe has been used quite successfully on a broad range of species and fisheries throughout the world to enable anglers to still go fishing while having the least possible impact on fish stocks. You have to, acknowledge that there is a catch and release mortality. The best science of the day will tell you that if you do everything right, you're probably going to be sitting somewhere around 5%. This means that 1 out of every 20 fish you land is probably not going to make it. And in some cases, that number could be a lot worse. I think that as anglers, the best thing we can do to minimize our impact, quite simply, is to catch less fish. If things are so bad that we can't kill them, maybe we shouldn't fish at all. So essentially, we want to remove ourselves from the water. Well, at the end of the day, if we can find ways to still enjoy these places and be connected to them, then we're going to be the champions of those places over time. And the real danger is if people stop going fishing because they can't kill fish, then who's going to care 1 or 2 generations removed if the fish are still there? Do I look down on people who harvest fish where it's legally allowed? So if you want to keep a coho, no, fish is catching your own food. That's great. That was the start of the experience for me. Let's say we have a lodge of 15, 20 people, and let's say we were a kill lodge. Okay, so that means on a weekly basis, we're packing up a lot of fish, salmon. The guest's focus then is on the box. The box is the box of dead fish. How was your trip? My box is half full. Oh, my box is full. It was a great trip. You take the box away, and you just catch and release by default. Now it's, how was your day? What did you see? Did you have a bite? Did you like the water you fished? Did you see a wolf? Yeah, we saw a wolf. We saw an eagle. Whatever it was, how was your casting? Casting was good. The focus is not on the box. Over time, we're going to find other ways that we can minimize our impact and preserve our access so we can still go fishing. And in periods of low abundance, so when you don't have a lot of fish, I think that this becomes especially important. if 1 out of 20 fish caught is not going to make it, then how do we make sure that we're not, leaving a trail of dead fish behind us? Well, don't catch too many of them. That's how it goes, but still enjoy your time on the water.
It's not that I'm not proud to be a fish guide. It's just that, I would say that I try not to identify solely as anything. My relationship with the fish up here is multifaceted, like everybody's relationship with the fish. If you want to talk about fisheries is like, or the plight of fish, that's just death by 1,000 cuts, really, isn't it? Because you've got a million different groups of people all choosing to identify as individual groups of people. In which case, you get the same old story we get in so much of our life, an us and them conversation, which inherently causes a ton of divide. And it's very hard to get over. And it's very easy to harbor resentment if you've chosen a side like that. Nobody wants to give up what they've got. And everybody has a story, and everybody has a culture. Like, the commercial guys on the coast, they have a culture. They have a story, they have history, they have a family history, they have a economic history, they have a community history, and they don't want to give that up. Who can blame them? First Nations, same story. Culture, family history, blah, blah, blah. Anglers, sport anglers, that's undeniably the same. You can break it down simply. They have a history here with the fish. There's connections and yada, yada, yada. And they don't want to give up opportunity. But that has nothing to do with fish. Fish do not care what your story is when you kill them. Or pull them around. Whatever. The fish do not care. So, at that point, you kind of have to break it down to okay, well, how much validity do we give to people's stories and these camps of people that have quote unquote interest? If you're non-subscribed and you're willing to go to the table and be truthful, then you can stand up and go, hey, I had a hand in that. And nobody's perfect, and you can't hate everybody for having a history or leaning on a history. It's what we're taught. But moving forward, people just need to get out of camps, get out of I'm this. You're not that. You're just you. And every day when you wake up in the morning, you have the opportunity to take the information that's come your way and filter it through a logical perspective of the fish.
We eat them, we sell them to market, we sell the chance to catch one of them. All of these pursuits hold value, but if our pursuit lacks honesty and compassion, we may find ourselves boxed in by our own pursuit, blind to the beliefs of others, or perhaps even the true value of these fish. Living in a place where you have access to wild salmon and steelhead is a privilege. So I made my way up one of the tributaries of the Skeena in my inflatable jet boat to the Deep Creek Fish Hatchery, so I could learn more about the role that salmon hatcheries can play in managing the fishery. And of course, chase wild steelhead with a fellow fly fishing enthusiast in order to maintain my perspective and insanity.
With this particular river, all species of Pacific salmon live here, as well as steelhead. And the program that we work on deals with Chinook salmon. And we do a mark recapture program. We're trying to get an estimate of the Chinook escapement. And we produce fry with coated wire tags on them in order to figure out who's catching what, how many fish are being harvested, and where, whether they were caught in the Alaskan trawl or or if they were just caught by an angler in the Skeena River, for instance. Yeah, we get an idea how many of them are harvested. Here's an example of a big hatchery one.
How big was it?
Didn't weigh it, but it's a big one. It would have been in the 60 pound range, a little bit more. We get an escapement estimate of the total population in the Salmon River, and we use that as an indicator for the whole Skeena system. And if we know how many there are and how many are harvested, we can extrapolate that data to how many have been caught in the Skeena as a whole. If we're predicting a low return, then the fishery gets shut down, which is unfortunate, but we have to use the tools that we can and that we can use. And if we're forecasting a poor run, then we better shut it down, right? We have to. One could argue, if they fish, they're going to be interested in fish and they're going to want to protect the fish. But then the other side of things is, we have too many fishermen out there, then there's too much pressure on the fish. And, we know in come the near future, there's just going to be more and more people. We have to plan for more and more people that are wanting to use the resource. No matter what move is made, there's going to be, you're not going to make everyone happy, so it makes it a little bit more complicated than you'd think. But ultimately, I think that the best thing for the fish would be to leave them alone. I mean, in terms of harvest and taking away their habitat.
So leave them alone and leave their habitat alone. That makes sense, but do you think that's realistic?
No, I don't. That's what I'm saying. If we want the fish to come back, to leave them alone, but is that going to happen? I was just saying you're not going to make everyone happy.
Mm-hmm.
What did we do last night?
We went for sushi.
You are filming a documentary on Skeena salmon and what we need to do to protect them. And we went for sushi last night. What are we doing right now?
We're fishing for steelhead and coho.
We're angling for steelhead.
So we're not leaving them alone.
We're not leaving them alone.
If we weren't able to fish or hunt or gather, then we would become less human because we're animals and we live in this world. I don't know what we would become. Maybe like we'd become zombies. We'd all become zombies if we couldn't interact with the environment in some kind of, deep and meaningful way. Did it take 3 good rounds? Has it come airborne yet? Well, what about that was fun?
Oh, the whole thing was deadly. Good hit. You came running from about a mile away in excitement. And nothing but good times. I don't know.
Would you say that catching fish makes you love them more?
Yeah.
Me too.
Absolutely.
For me, fishing is a lot of things, but perhaps beyond all else, it has become a searching for proof that something so remarkable, so incredible, so irreplaceable still exists. We all need fish. Different people depend on salmon and steelhead in different ways. This dependency flows through culture, food, lifestyle, jobs, spirituality, and so on. But we would all be ignorant to think that we are the only animals dependent on these fish. To observe salmon fulfilling their role in the natural ecosystem is an eye-opening, magical experience. Which is why I am making my way to the Central Coast to gain some insight into the world of ecotourism.
I'm a wilderness guide and sailboat captain, and I've been leading nature tours throughout coastal BC for the last 14 years, taking people to some of our most remote places to see some of the wildest things this coast has to offer. Over the years, I've guided well over 2,000 people up and down the coast here. Many of them have had incredible experiences with the animals and learned things that they never thought they would, you know, because our coast offers so much. There's so much to see that a lot of people haven't discovered. It's all kind of a big pyramid, and it all depends on the base to support it, and salmon are a huge part of that. So although we're not, you know, commercially fishing or anything like that, this ecotourism industry really depends on wild, healthy salmon stocks, wild, healthy river systems, you know, and the things that the salmon eat. You know, we need it all. We need a healthy system for our people to, you know, be able to enjoy coming out and seeing these things. So when people come on the boat, a lot of them are really interested in trying to get great photos of wildlife. So part of my job is to line up the shots and make sure that, you know, the foreground or background looks good, get things in the right light. And a lot of these people have amazing cameras and walk away with National Geographic kind of photos, which is really fantastic. And we learn lots along the way as we photograph the animals. Details of their lives are revealed, and so there's always something to learn every time we go out.
When I was invited by Captain Tom to accompany him as his deckhand aboard a 70-foot sailboat selling ecotourism, wilderness and wildlife photography trips along coastal BC, I was delighted at the opportunity. The opportunity to look beyond the human dependency on salmon. We departed early in the morning, and I was determined to be the best deckhand Captain Tom has ever seen.
Just quickly catch me up to speed on sailor terminology, because I'm having a little bit of a hard time keeping up.
Okay.
Scuppers.
You got scuppers, you got furlers, you got spreaders, you got shrouds, you got bowlines, you got
cantilevers, lug nuts.
We got no.
You want me to hoist the main? Land ho! Bow, stern.
Yeah, you got your bow, your stern, your beam.
Batten down the hatches, scrub the poop deck, hoist the main, drop the anchor. The perfect colon, a bowlin'. Why do they call it a deck winch? What's the hula hoop for? What do you do with a drunken sailor early in the morning? Hula, hula, hula. You want me to dog down the hatches? Lazarette?
We got the Lazarette.
Heard you
yeah,
say
we
that.
got the Lazarette.
Where are you going? Is it a buoy or a boy? And why isn't it a girl? That's sexist to call it a boy.
The little log up ahead.
Don't want to hit that. Hard starboard! Shave his belly with a rusty razor. Shave his belly with a rusty razor. You want me to scrub the poop deck?
This is all normal stuff?
Well, it's not normal. It's very abnormal. You sailors are weird. In a bay, waiting out a storm. The biggest gust we've had was up to 50 knots. Kind of holding between 20 and 30. Captain Tom's gone for a nap. Classic. I'm just holding down the fort, looking for wolves this morning. Didn't see any. So, off to find spirit bears tomorrow.
Looking for rocks.
Hey, oh, na, na, I'm gonna roll down the river now, and I ain't taking anybody back where we're going from here. 'Cause where I'm headed to, I know. Gonna roll down the river now. Ain't taking no burdens on my way. Gonna head back to the heaven place. Gonna find my place by the swollen face of rolling down the river now.
As I observe the intricate and interconnected web of life unfold in front of me, I recognize something familiar. Something complex yet simple. Something incredibly inspirational and refreshing. Something in the way they move. Wild animals are confidently full of purpose and a sense of duty. A duty to their species to survive, and a duty to uphold the fragile balance of the natural ecosystem. An ecosystem that all life depends on. We are all pursuing a relationship with these fish for our own reasons, and every one of these reasons has value. But how many of our relationships are pursued with the future in mind, the fish in mind? How many of us are thinking about our own impact? How many of us are thinking about the children? The common narrative is that we are all dependent on these fish. But today's reality is that the fish are now depending on us, to put our differences aside, to put ourselves aside, and to stand together, shifting our focus from what's best for us to what's best for the fish and the environment that we all live in together. We are past the point of fair and need to accept that. What we need to do now is to work together and make sure that the children of the future have something to fight over. I mean, protect and enjoy together.